very wonderful connection with Firestorm, and look forward to continuing that throughout 2017 as well.
Well, thank you. That's terrific. And we do not have Ryan Mercer with us today. We have well, I'm not going to say even better because I like them both so much. We have Ken Mercer with us. And Ken, do you want to talk a little bit about what it's like being a Firestorm principal in your neck of the woods, and how's election going today?
Good morning, Karen. I have not been out to vote yet today, so I can't comment on the election. That is my duty after this webinar. I just want to make all the Virginia Association schools aware of two significant benefits that are available to all member schools. Number one is a self-assessment. Takes about 60 minutes to go through that with me. We can do it over the phone, and you will get a very detailed report showing your status of preparedness across 8 different dimensions of preparedness. Again, it's free. We sell those for about $2,500, but for all the member schools, it is free. And the second benefit is a crisis stop program. Really, it's a free phone call for any member school who is in trouble, any crisis. We define crisis as anything that impacts your daily work. When your ability to run your school is impaired for any reason whatsoever, that is an invitation to call Firestorm. The principals of Firestorm have been in business 10 years, helping all businesses, schools included, through these types of crises. And the first hour of that consultation is completely free. We will walk you through some steps to improve your situation. If you would like to engage us after that, that would be a paid engagement, but the first hour is free, and you will have consultation with the very best people in the business doing this work. So my contact information will be on the final slide here in this program, and I will reach out to all attendees in the program in the next week or so to introduce myself and answer any questions you have about the content or these two offers. So thank you very much, Karen. Thanks for your time today. And thank you to the Virginia Association. This has been a marvelous association and affiliation. It's been very good for Firestorm, and I trust that it has been equally as good for the Virginia Association. Thank you very much for your time and attendance.
Oh, thank you so much, Ken, and thank you very much, Kim. And Ken, if I don't have your direct contact information on the last slide, mea culpa, but I'll make sure that all of our attendees receive a follow-up email with that information if they should like that. Also, folks, during the presentation today, if you have any questions or comments, you can use the GoToWebinar dialogue chat area. You can type in a question there. If we have time, we will get to those. If not, if it's a pressing question, I will personally respond to it with Ken after the session. And I do appreciate your attending today, especially because so many of our schools are polling places on this very busy election day. So thank you for all you do. And let's jump into our presentation today. If, again, my PowerPoint will move forward. My name is Karen Masullo. I am the Chief Intelligence Officer and the Executive Vice President for Social Media and Marketing for Firestorm. And I have been around social media for what seems like years and years and years. Back in the day, what I consider one of the very first social media applications approached the company that I worked for at the time and said they were launching this startup, and would we be interested in partnering with them? And that company we were interested. We were one of the first companies to explore using groups in the application, and that company was called LinkedIn. So people think social media is some new phenomena, and it's not. It is a tool like any other media tool that is used by both marketers and researchers in order to study and reach out to their communities and audiences. So it's important that we understand how we use both social and traditional media to help you keep your students, your employees, your campuses, your parents, and your community as a whole safer. What's important to me, though, is to really understand what threats worry you. And if you want to, especially if you're in a group of people today, if you're listening in a conference room and maybe there are 2 or 3 or more of you around, please do use that chat function, because any input that you give us through these sessions is only going to make us better, but also helps us specifically address those issues that are a concern to you. So I really would like to know what threats do worry you. We know that weapons are a concern. We know that there is a great deal, there are many resources available for active shooters. But we have taken the approach throughout the past year or more that we really need to be looking at all deadly weapons in the same way, and what can be a deadly weapon on your grounds. We also know it's not just about deadly weapons. There are a myriad of other threats that you worry about every day, things that keep you up at night, things that keep you from being able to really relax in your environment, because you must constantly be diligent, and we do applaud you for that. We did a survey over this year, and you participated in some of this information, and we asked were you concerned about just general violence in your schools? And the schools responded in the upper quadrant. In the lower quadrant, we have businesses. Actually, there were people who said it's never going to happen, so we're not going to worry about it. They were a very, very tiny portion of the group that we surveyed, and we're relieved about that. But there are always going to be disaster denial people in your group, so you got to remember that. But really, overwhelmingly, 446, if we take the 212 respondents and 234 respondents together, said that they were either somewhat concerned or very concerned about violence in their schools. And I want to make a point that you on this call understand something that maybe others don't. I'm going to very quickly show you, I'm going to go live out onto the web to our website, and I want to show you an article that we published last week, and it's a hard title. It's called "It's Not That Big a Story If No One Died." And this is my home state, South Carolina, and on the right-hand side we see Jacob Hall. He was a school shooting victim. On October 1st, he passed away. And one of our experts was contacted by the media, one of our indirect experts, to make comment on the story, and later on was contacted by that same media person and said, you know what, we're not going to go ahead and do the interview. It's not that big a story. No one died. And if this were your child who was wounded, that comment, it still stuns me. And I want to make a point that even though you're dealing with these things every day, to the outside world, there's an objectification that occurs. When we see that students who may be suspected to be gang members have been in an incident, the media passes over that very, very quickly because we've become objectified. They say, oh, it's just gang violence. But at Firestorm, for our monitoring practice, we look at all of these threats and bring them all together for you in a way that's meaningful. So I think it's important that we agree and understand that all threats are serious threats, and other than how the media may treat it, we believe that every crisis is a human crisis. And in almost every disaster or incident of violence or an act of terrorism, there were warning signals. And that's what my team does. My team are trained in research analytics, and they work very hard to understand what those behavioral warning signals may be through the groundbreaking work of our founders, Susie Laughlin, Harry Rulin, and Jim Satterfield, who have created a program that really allows us to systematically and methodically look at social and traditional media to identify what are patterns of behaviors of concern. And then we're able to go back to our founders and people like Ken, who's on the phone, and say, you know, this is something new that we're seeing and we think we need to talk about. After almost every event of school or workplace violence, and schools are workplaces, we see so many of the same kinds of comments. You should have seen the things he was posting online. I knew this was going to happen. There was just something that wasn't right about her or about him. I reported it, but no one did anything. He was always such a nice guy. We always see these kinds of comments. And by the way, if you hear any background noises, Roxanne the Wonder Dog has joined me in my office, and so if she barks, she's saying hello. So we're going to take a look at a specific, let's say a hypothetical student. We're going to call him Fred. And the question we need to ask ourselves is if we could stop just one act of violence or death or suicide. And we see this all the time. What are some of those behavioral cues that we might see? Working with our clients, when we do have a student or a person that is exhibiting behaviors of concern, we can then become more hyper-diligent to understand if they are expressing themselves in any other venues or formats that may be helpful in order to get this person help to keep them from injuring themselves or others. We might see increasing arguments with teachers or coaches, grades dropping dramatically, fellow students anonymously reporting that someone is getting upset or that he made vague threats, so-and-so will be sorry. The absenteeism rate suddenly drastically increases. Friends hear him talking crazy, but they don't really want to get involved, or they don't want to be the person to be the rat. The post on social media use terms like he's tired of being treated like a dog, he's going to make them all sorry. We know these are some significant red flags. Now, if those things happen, who's in charge at your school? How would you know today? Do you have a mechanism today so that if something was posted on social media last night at 1 o'clock in the morning, you would have known before you came to school today? Or would you have found out because a parent saw it on a student's phone and didn't call you until 9 o'clock this morning? How does that information come to you? How then do you share that information? How is it seen and who sees it? What's your system for making sure all content that's curated around a specific incident or student is kept in the same place so that everybody is working from the same page? Or do you have disparate systems? Something gets entered here, something gets entered there, and there the two shall meet. And is all key information known? Is it in context? The challenge when we don't have these parts and pieces in place around a broad program is that when my team does their piece, which is monitoring before, during, and after incidences, there's no place for that information to go where it does any good. So you have to have the foundation set. We call this, Bertha, behavioral risk threat analysis. It's our program. Think of it as the big sister to Alice. And by connecting the dots and creating a foundation, it is our hope that we can keep that gun or the knife from ever entering the school grounds. So when we look at monitoring and intelligence, there are 4 key preventative steps that we use. The first thing is what Ken mentioned to you at the top of the call, and that's assessing risk. We can do a simple risk assessment, and then at some point that deeper dive, which really helps us understand what the real cultural and situational threats may be to your specific building, location, state, your region. We address the dangers of workplace violence through a vulnerability and a threat assessment process. And it's a comprehensive risk assessment, and it should be done at least annually to ensure that we can identify threats that emerge as a result of students, employees, administrative changes, technology, new staff coming in. So there are a variety of reasons that needs to be done on a regular basis. We'd like to see it done twice a year. But to start off, reach out to Ken and do this high-level self-assessment with Ken, or a partnered assessment, and there's no fee for that. And then that will help us start understanding if these are the kinds of threats that your school may be looking at. We see a quote from someone: "We have already planted napalm, propane, and pressure cooker explosives in multiple schools. They're set to go off in places that will cause maximum structural damage to each building for maximum casualty." This is a truly frightening threat to be received. Getting ready to bomb Tennessee schools in Tipton County, Thursday, November 19th. Get ready for war. I want to leave a trail of death and fire at Plainfield. I have in my possession 3 homemade pipe bombs, 2 handguns, a semi-automatic rifle. These go on and on. So we need to understand what are your specific risks. And again, today, on a high-profile day like today, I'm sure a lot of schools are struggling with this. The next thing, after a risk assessment, then we sit down and we really work together to understand what are we monitoring and what are the current trends that are occurring in, again, your specific area. We establish that process for monitoring trends that are around violence incidences inside and outside of the school, because we also want to look at the neighborhood, especially if we're doing geolocation services. We can drop a pin in your school and then say, okay, let's look at a 5-mile radius around the school and see what's going on. Maybe there's a nightclub so that at night there's some violence that spills over onto your property as people leave there and hang out on your property, things like that. So we regularly review incidents that occur in your specific area, and then we adjust our strategies and plans accordingly with you. Now, Dr. Langman, Peter Langman, has a fabulous website. I think it's, I'm sorry, I meant to include the URL. I think it's schoolshooting.info. and he has looked at the past 50 years of trends, and it's profound work. Again, reach out to Ken or myself. We'll be happy to make sure that you have that. But it's a 50-year review. It was just updated October 31st. So anyone who's interested in understanding the science of trend monitoring, this is some really terrific work. And when we look at trends, I'm sure every single person on this call is so sick and tired of clowns. Don't know why the clown hoax started. I want to slap everyone I know who has continued to share these sort of hoaxes on Facebook. I even know someone who said, yeah, I just saw a clown come out of the woods. And it was someone I knew. I said, no, you didn't. You don't even live near the woods. So, I mean, I'm not sure what this is about. Some people are actually getting, they're not just hoaxing it, you know. So now you've got a bit of the real mixed in with the macabre, and you need to be hyper diligent. The police are taking this very seriously. If you do see or hear of anything, report it. We work with a school system now who had someone within their school system create one of these accounts and start threatening to show up at specific times, even though they were able to figure out who was posing the threat, and it was a student and he was just playing along with the hoax. The police took it much more seriously, but also it created a lot of mayhem on campus. Especially we've seen just crowds of people, you know, thousands of students in large schools and college campuses running to the location where the hoax clowns say they're going to be. That increases police presence in those areas and takes the police away from campus police or local police away from other things they need to be doing. So I think we all know there's a domino effect to this, and we just can't allow it to continue. The third step, so we have assessment, we have trend monitoring. The third step is understanding who's really in your building. And social media and traditional and new media monitoring really can complement your efforts in this regard. We can help you in a variety of ways. Now, there are a couple of reasons why it behooves the school system to work with a company like Firestorm or another that helps you with the monitoring piece of this. And that is because, I'll give you a simple example. We were doing some monitoring for a school system that was having a problem with a specific employee. And when we were doing the research on publicly posted information, right, we don't look at anything that's private, we came across some information that our school system did not need to know. It had nothing to do with the case. It had nothing to do with the person that was in question. But it may have caused a discriminatory or a backlash against another employee subconsciously had the school system seen some information that we saw posted. So you're actually protecting yourself by not allowing other things that you see to influence hiring decisions or disciplinary matters or decisions. So I wanted to add that in because I think it's an important point of how we continue to help protect you. Of course, please don't give lip service to conducting pre-employment screening. You know, let us work with you. We'll help find best-of-class employment screening vendors. We have many on our expert council that can help you and explain to the employee that you're going to be doing updated checks at your discretion. You do that during the hiring process. You make sure that you lay everything out. And during the hiring process, please make sure that you have not copied a social media plan from the web and stuck it into your new orientation, but that you've really thought about what a social media program for your school looks like. A few years back, there was to be no interaction on social media between educators and students. Now, we see educators really leveraging the power of social media to teach in new and interesting ways. So we have to understand that some of those things may change in your school district. How does that change? What are your responsibilities? What does oversight look like? And what does monitoring look like as a result? You know, when we look at who's in your building, there are two reasons Firestorm gets called in quite often. And the first is that we're doing long-term monitoring as a part of a BRFA program. So a school district will put our behavioral risk threat assessment program in, and as I mentioned earlier, monitoring is in the Predict, Plan, and Perform pieces of that. It's all throughout the program. So we'll do that for a long term, 3 or 4 years. We'll be monitoring for an entire district or an individual school in a way that's very custom to that organization. Or, sadly, the other way that we get introduced to many of the schools that we work with now in a long-term way is that they had some situation with an educator being arrested or accused of something. This is not necessarily always involving some level of sexual abuse, although sadly it seems to be the majority. But there may be drugs, there may be other behaviors that occur that cause this. But if you just Google teacher accused or teacher arrested, there are millions and millions of results. And these aren't old results. It happens every day in schools all across the nation. And it's something you just really must stay on top of. You've got to know who's in your building at all times, and we can help you in that regard. And last, what we want you to do is to understand how to aggregate your social media and what the analysis of that looks like. When we first start working with schools, you know, people say, well, you've got to monitor our sports team, and you've got to monitor, you know, our school name, and you need to monitor, the one building is a really important building. People talk about it all the time. What we're looking for is a little bit more nuanced than that. What we're looking for are the conversations that kids have with each other that allows us to understand the syntax and, again, the nuance of speech of your specific school, school district, region, of the country, because the slang terms, the terms for weapons, the terms for drugs, the terms for violence against women or the LGBT community, those may differ from New York to California to Oregon to Florida. So yes, we want to look at your school name, but understand you may have the same school name as 25 other schools across the country. So we need to have the ability to become more sensitive to when it's your school being discussed. And after about 30 days, we usually give ourselves a 30-day baseline when we start. The analysis, the analyst that is assigned to a specific school really starts to understand the school better. We start to understand the culture of the school, the culture of the educators, the culture of the dean or the head of school, the students themselves, the clubs, the groups, the cliques, the bullies, and where some of the behavioral issues may lie. For those of you who are on, I did an earlier webinar in this subject, I believe it was in April, and we had just come out of 2015, and right at the end of 2015, we had caught a gun right before it walked into school. We saw the person posting it from their home. We knew we had a very small window. We had about 15 or 20 minutes from the time that post was made till we knew the school day was starting. And we understood the school system, and we were able to get to someone very quickly and say, we're not positive, we think this is the person who may be bringing a weapon to school today. And they indeed were. And they also found a clip in the student's locker, which the student shared on social media. I'll never understand that, but I'm really grateful that people continue to share really crazy stuff on social media. So when we talk about aggregating the social media analysis, we really hope it never gets to the point where we're seeing what we're seeing on the screen now. And that was Robert Butler from 2011, before he killed an assistant principal and seriously wounded the principal of the school. He put on Facebook, everybody that used to know me, I'm expletive sorry, but Omaha changed me and expletived me up. And the school I attend is even worse. You're going to hear about the evil I did, but the school drove me to do this. I want you guys to remember me for who I was before this. I know I greatly affected the lives of the family's room, but I'm sorry. We don't want to see that. But it's important that we understand it and know it. And again, it was posted on Facebook where it can be found. So here's an example of one from September. This person's Twitter account has been suspended, so there's nothing there to see. But imagine this was your school, and somebody came to you, and or a parent or a student, and said, you know, I just saw this on Twitter, and it's really freaking me out. I'm not coming to school tomorrow. And suddenly you have 500 kids that aren't coming to school tomorrow. Something really scary has occurred. We have a principal who's trying to communicate through Blackboard or through School Connect with parents, with students. And we have a kid who thinks this is funny or is serious. We don't know. Now, one student then later said, I think it's just because of a rivalry game. People are saying it might be a student at Hickory Ridge just to spook the Central kids because it's our rivals. It's not a joke, and it's prosecutable. So our students need to understand this isn't funny, and the police don't think this is funny either. I want to talk a little bit about geospoofing, because in this we were able to figure out exactly, you know, we knew it was a school that was being targeted in North Carolina. And how do we go about understanding location? What you're seeing on your screen right now, I hope you're seeing it on your screen right now, is one of the monitoring tools that we use. And this is the campus of a school. I've asked it just to show me Twitter and Instagram. And if you'll notice off to the right, there's a baseball field, and then a little bit further off to the right, there's a little bit of green. That's the football field. And so it gives me a bird's eye view of all of the chatter and activity that's going on my campus, on my school, for a specific period. I could sort this by word or just by general conversation. So this is just general conversations, and if I clicked into any of these little instances, it would tell me what the tweet or the Instagram message was, if there was a picture, the person. It gives me all the information I know, and this is all publicly posted and aggregated. So we're not looking, again, at anything private, anything that's private to a specific device. We can't do that. That's another step. So this then allows me to see this view of it, because these people are posting with their geolocation services turned on. So I'm able to see through the geocode where they are. In addition to this activity, there's probably a great deal more activity going on, but all I've asked it to show me is that which is geocoded. So I have another application that I look at for all information. Then I'm able to see the full picture. The reason I bring this up to you is because geolocation can be spoofed. So it's not the primary thing I use. Many schools will come to us and say, well, can't you just put a fence, a geofence around our school and just let us know who's talking within our school walls? Well, we can, but that's not, not everybody uses geocoding or turns it on their device. But now we have to understand that people can spoof their GPS. There are hundreds of applications that allow you to do this. And this was a guy who bragged on the what's considered the front page of the web, Reddit, and he bragged in a Reddit thread that they had just spoofed their GPS and were trolling Yik Yak. It's fantastic, he says. He was arrested for making a terrorist threat on a campus that was about 100 miles away from this now deleted account. And what he did was use a fake GPS location spoofer. They're free, and again, there are hundreds. And on Yik Yak, he said, I'm going to stand my ground tomorrow and shoot every black person I see. In a state that was having significant issues at the time, and still is, great deal of racial tension, he was sitting 100 miles away and decided that he was just going to create some strife and some problems. And anybody can do a geocode search. Anybody can spoof a geocode. What we're trying to do, though, is bring everything together and aggregate it for you so that you can see it in a more full picture. So that's what a spoof looks like, and it's important to understand that if you can spoof to appear at a location, you can be at that location and spoof yourself to appear elsewhere. And that's the one that concerns me, that we want to look at. If someone's threatening the school and you say, well, it can't be John Doe because John Doe's IP tells us that he was in Boston at the time. So you can do both. And there are so many ways to anonymize yourself on the web. That's why some of the things that we look at are both in the dark web and the clear web. We go through and look at applications that you may not know of, you may not have heard of, things like, or things you kind of have heard of like 4chan and aren't really sure what they mean. We look at quite a bit to help make sure that you and your students are protected. And we know that spoofing allows people to issue threats and even film those threats as they happen on the campus and then create all sorts of interesting broadcasts. And we've seen that happen quite often, especially with digital swatting. Gamers were doing it to each other. Now digital swatting has sort of, with tools like Facebook Live and YouNow and some of those other on-the-spot recording broadcast, self-broadcasting, we've seen an awful lot of that kind of thing happen. I want you all to think for a moment of this social comment that we saw. This was in a comment to a news story that I was reading about, and this was a comment somebody made. And he said, when are we going to stop taking these threats seriously? Do we really think the bad guys are going to tell the authorities their plan before it happens? It's probably some kid who wanted to get out of his Friday afternoon test. I will tell you that we do take these threats seriously. We have to take these threats seriously. You know that. You educators know you have to take every single threat seriously. And do we really think the bad guys are going to tell the authorities their plan before it happens? Yes, they do. They want the notoriety. Through awareness, context, tools, and training, we can identify those threats And I want to move forward just a bit and show you something, especially that really upset me when that person said, do we really think they're going to talk about it on social media? People do. You know, the first thing we do is we become aware of how kids talk, what they're talking about. We can also search emoji, which is interesting. And we look for different words next to specific conversations that helps us put it into some sort of a context of what the conversation might be about. This was a person that was threatening some cheerleaders if they did not send him nude images. He was going to bring a gun to school on Friday and kill all the girls. He said, I will, I'm serious, I'll do it at 9:30 Friday during the first hour. This really freaked out the young girls that he was talking to, and fortunately that threat was taken care of. But also when we're looking at context, we're talking about, here's one that I'm taking my gun to school. Yesterday they tried to jump me. Well, when we do a little bit of a deeper dive on this, we understand these are lyrics to a song. In 2014, there was a band called Amur, and one of the lines in the song they had written called Take a Gun to School, really creative, was her boyfriend's a jerk, so he's going to take a gun to school and shoot everybody. And that trended. There were almost a million retweets, reshares of that line from that song. And we had to alert all of our schools that this is something that's trending. We need you not to be alarmed when you see this or you hear this. My dog is whining in the background, so I do apologize for that. So we take this awareness, we put it into context, and then using tools and training, we're able to give you a really good picture of what may be going on. But again, I want to get just to that one part of people not talking about it on the web. Consistently, we have seen violent shooters somewhere have published a manifesto of some type on the web. And that website I had referenced before from Dr. Langham's is a great resource for actually seeing those materials. But this one at the bottom as well, Elliot Roger, I actually, before all of those were removed, all of the videos, his video manifestos were removed, I actually was able to study those. And there is a pattern here that we really do need to be aware of. And through monitoring, we're able to understand some of the terms, some of the words, some of the phraseology, and it's very helpful in helping you move your efforts forward in this regard. In a behavioral snapshot in behaviors of concern, we know that in the social or peer part of this puzzle, there may again be cues that we need to look at, and part of that, in addition to erratic behavior or social withdrawal, are angry or threatening statements made on social media. And that's what our team does. We're here to help support you in that regard. You know, we asked a group of schools over the year, do you currently use external intelligence to identify potential threats? And 30% of the folks said, you know, they just really didn't know. 37% said absolutely no. Now 30% said yes, which is great. We'd like to see that number grow to 60% or more this year, because that means we're doing everything we can to keep our students and, again, our campuses safer. The Firestorm Crisis Management Performance Maturity Rating Model shows that once you get into the supportive and strategic phases of a culture of preparedness within your organization, you have clearly defined processes and structures in place that feed you the information that you need when you need it in order that you can make highly efficient and timely decisions. When you're not sure what's going on, you can't make a decision without possibly making the situation worse. So by providing you with clear, structured, defined information, it allows you to make better decisions and allows you better management of a crisis. We also know the greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. And that's one of my favorite quotes, and I'd like to close our session today and leave you with that. We want to do everything we can to help you keep your campuses safer. You can download a brief of this session. In a couple of days, it should be ready. It will be called The Evolution of Monitoring. It will be on our website under Resources. And a recording of this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel within the next 2 hours, I would say. I want to thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you have a terrific day. And if you haven't voted, get out and vote. And if you have, thanks for being part of the process. This will end our session for today. Thank you very much.